All right, guys, today we're going to talk about the grip. Grip, basic grip technique basically comes from two things, two principles: leverage and friction. Leverage, I got to get as high as I can to the gun. Friction, I got to put as much skin onto the frame, the anywhere surface on the gun as much as I can to create that friction. And friction, to get that and achieve that, is to create some sort of pressure. So to show you guys how it would look like on a gun, with my right hand, I'm going to get as high as I can. So you can see as that beaver tail digs into the rear of the hand, right? I'm going to get as high as I can. And the missing piece to that puzzle here is basically this meaty part of my hand, where I place that meaty part there. And basically I squeeze up the top as high as I can. Some people like to put their finger here, and that's totally fine. Me, I do this traditional grip, and this is more of a C-clamp, where I grip like this as opposed to gripping my finger. Grip like this, same with this. I grip down and back. And this pinky is going to be the one that creates my leverage point to be able to push my thumb and my wrist down, create that pinky pressure, and my middle two finger is going to be flopping around a little bit, but it's going to be tight. It's a tight C-clamp. It's not a finger pressure. So it's going to be there. And then my support hand is going to fill that gap right there in that little space as high as I possibly can. Not like this, where my thumbs are right next to each other. It's going to be as far forward as possibly in order for my wrist to be locked. So in full extension, it looks like this. You can see my wrist is almost basically in a linear fashion as opposed to when it's down here. You can see how that much more of an angle that's going to allow for my gun to recoil up and down. So I'm going to try to make that more of a skeletal thing as opposed to muscular. And so now when my gun goes up, it doesn't flick on my wrist. The second technique that I use is bending my elbows back a little bit. By bending my elbows back a little bit, it allows me to absorb that recoil right here and not necessarily on my wrist. Since I'm locking my wrist, I want that to come back on my elbow, and essentially I have built-in shock absorbers. The last thing I want to talk about is my technique. My specific technique basically is all about wrist pressure, right? So basically I'm going to have my two hands as if I'm holding my hands. I'm going to show you guys. I'm going to grip the gun, and then I'm going to turn my hands in on my wrist, not my elbows, not like this. I'm going to turn my hands in and forward. Those two things I'm going to apply, and those two little torsion I'm going to apply, and I'm going to put as much pressure as I can on top and on top or near the top of the gun, because that's where I'm trying to mitigate as much lift and as much movement as I possibly can. So with that pressure coming in like this, right, I don't have to necessarily use as much finger pressure now. I'm using more of a twisting pressure, using my chest and keeping my shoulders down and keeping my forearms somewhat flexed, not locked out. And that's it. In terms of grip, again, review: leverage, friction, wrist twisting in and forward.